Today, we're looking at Noodler's Nikita. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Noodler's Nikita is a red ink. The red ink I have some of the most experience with because when I got it, originally, it was to grade papers, and it's a 4.5 ounce bottle that I've been working my way through. It's not bad, it's just that I would rather go to a not red at this point. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples, I put the ink into a different pen per day, I then put it into a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography. And I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is that line of red that I put down is very there. It immediately seeped into the filter paper. The red did push up and out of the way. This is not an absolutely permanent ink, but it does have some permanence to it. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And not as much red went away. If you look at the two of them side by side, the one that I did immediately has a lot more red at the top than the one I let dry. The one I let dry, most of it actually stayed in that very thin line, and only very light red was pushing up out of place. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, the surprising result off of the chromatographies is this ink does not like to be reactivated. That blew out entirely. Do not use this in a note-taking situation because you may lose some very important writing. Water only moved the top layer of ink around, smudged it all over the place. If you look carefully, you can see where the drop of water was, but it didn't do anything to get rid of this ink. Now, pen flesh did way more than water did, but there's a lot left behind. You see that that red got much, much lighter. It really did push it off. At this point, I don't know why I smeared the ink or the water away, but I didn't just dab it up. But we see a lot of ink left behind. We see one spot where we do see some of the white of the paper, which is like a redeeming thought. But it does have that kind of resistance feel to it, which is a reason that I like to use it for grading. Bleach did not entirely remove it from the paper. With only 30 seconds there, we still see some left behind. Now, I haven't seen any kind of staining in my pens. However, if it was being really resistant and I had to use a little bit of a 1/3 bleach solution, I would put that into the pen quickly, get it out, immediately go to the pen flush, immediately start flushing that out with water. And that is more than enough to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Nikita has a viscosity of 2.48, making it normal and almost average. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Nikita has an average dry time of 13 seconds, making it normal, very edge of normal, but it is normal. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I have this ink in bottle form. Actually, it's the second bottle form. This is my preferred ink for grading papers, and it's down to right about here as a second bottle. I do wish that they offered it so more people would try it out in the 3-ounce bottle, and you can get it in samples. For teachers, I think this is fantastic. It's a great red. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. These pens must have been writing very dry this day because it's normally not like this. I wish I knew what my temperature and humidity was at this point. This could have been a cold winter type day here in Florida when I wrote this, that it's looking like this. And if the pens were a little drier, this would explain some of it. It's not as vivid through here, but it is what it is, and this is what we have. There is some shading with the 1.1, very minor. The R is a little darker than the rest of Noodlers. The K is a bit darker than the rest of Nikita. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. I see no shading here. It took 8 seconds to dry. The medium is a noticeably darker tone, same dark tone we got with the 1.1 with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. And the smear test, again, I believe these were writing very, very dry that day. But the smear test, the extra fine almost doesn't smear at all. And the medium, I believe you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. We get no bleeding. We get some minor ghosting. It's not horrible. I don't care for the paper because of its both sides thing. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 11 seconds to dry. The medium is a very noticeably darker tone, back to what the 1.1 was, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 19 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. In a smear test, you could probably recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium, back to the dark tone of the 1.1 with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it, and the smear test, again, I think it was just so dry that day that nothing was going to happen. When I was taking my notes, I went ahead, this is a broad, and it smears much farther. It's wetter. It doesn't take forever to me for this ink to dry, but I went ahead and did that just because I wasn't sure with some of these things and how they were looking. So because I like to use this ink to grade, I decided to test it with some of the cheaper papers students would use. Now this is Mead notebook paper. So what we get is the medium doesn't really bleed through, the extra fine's not bleeding through, and the ghosting is not horrible. So this works on student notebooks where you're not bleeding through all over all their pages. It does bleed a little heavier in with the medium, but not through. It does not touch the page underneath. The medium, when you write with the medium, you get no spread, but you do get some feathering, some light feathering all over it. No halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 2 seconds to dry. Scrubby showed us no color variation. We didn't get any. And it didn't smear. I mean, there's some, but it's 100% recoverable if it's smeared while you were writing with it. So 28-pound copy paper. 28-pound copy paper did a little better. There's a couple spots where it's starting to come through. Right up here on the medium. Other than that, we're not really seeing any kind of bleeding. We don't have ghosting. The medium at the top, it has feathering all over it. It has a little bit of spread. It has no halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. It definitely has some feathering all over it. Tiny little feathers all over all of the writing. No spread, no halo, sheen, no shade. 3 seconds to dry. The scrubby showed us no color variation, and we didn't get it. In the smear test, you could definitely recover if you smeared it. 20-pound copier paper. Now, the medium does not fare well at all. The extra fine definitely bleeds deeper into the page. It does not come through the page. It does not make the back of the page unusable for how most students do things. I don't use backs of pages. I think for a fountain pen user, it would make the back of the page unusable, but it does not touch the page underneath, and for grading on student handouts, this is perfectly fine. The medium at the top, it has spread, it has feathers, lots of feathers. No halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a lighter tone. It has spread, it has feathers, tiny feathers all over it. No halo, sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation. We didn't get it. And the smear test, you could not smear it at all. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Nikita, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now, I have a lot of experience with Noodler's Nikita, and I wanted to go with one of my favorite black inks, Noodler's Dark Matter. Because while red's not my favorite, I do think these two inks look very nice together. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Noodler's Nikita? Now, I said this has been my preferred ink for grading for a while, which it's nice that it comes in a 4.5 ounce bottle. I am on my second bottle, and I think a third to halfway through on that. I think when I finish it, I'm going to go to something not red. I think it would be very nice if they offered it in a 3 ounce version, although as a teacher, admittedly, I use a lot of red ink. My experience with this is especially on those cheaper papers. A fine or extra fine, very broad pen is best with this ink on a bunch of those cheap papers. On your better papers, you can use what you like. It is not a shading. Red typically does not shade well. But I have used a bottle and almost a half of this at 4.5 ounces. So I can't have all bad things to say, right? Thanks for watching.